Hey, good morning.
Welcome to the webinar. We're so glad that you're here. We're recording this, so you'll be able to refer to it later. All of you on this call should have already received your soil sample bags in the mail. And if you have not received those, then please email me afterwards so I know that you're still missing them. We appreciate everyone attending. We're really excited about using these Haney Soil Tests to be able to take our peer groups to another level. So just getting our peer groups more items to discuss and also giving farmers more tools to make decisions on the inputs on their farm. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mitchell and Carolyn and Rick.
Yeah. And so we got just a couple different things to just kind of tee up the project here. The main point of this webinar here this morning is just to kind of go over how you should approach these Haney samples that you're going to be doing here this spring. Just a little bit of kind of the tips and tricks to be able to go and do it. As Stephanie was saying, we're recording all of this as well, so we can look back on it. We'll make sure that the recording gets out there. We'll make sure that the slides get out to everybody as well. Just making sure that you've got all the resources that you need to be able to successfully go and enable this project on your own operation. By means of a quick intro, my name is Mitchell Hora. I met a lot of you guys when I was out there in Ohio. Continuum Ag is my company. We're based in Iowa, but we help farmers improve their soil health and implement regenerative ag. And the Haney Soil Health Test has really been our specialty, and has been a great tool on my own farm. And I'm excited to help you use it on your farm as well. Joining me is Carolyn, my agronomist. She is really helping to run point on the project here and overseeing our system, our software that we built for the Haney test and for implementing regenerative systems. Our system is called TopSoil. Each of you should have received an invite to join TopSoil. Carolyn is going to go through that here later. And we are also joined this morning by the legend himself, Dr. Rick Haney. And he is the developer of the Haney test, he and the rest of his team. Rick, you've got really short time here today. Do you want to maybe say anything real quick? And then we'll let Carolyn kind of go through the program. Rick is going to join us on the webinar here in another couple of weeks, where we're really going to dig into the data. But Rick, anything quick for the audience here? So I know it sounded like you might have to jump.
Yes, I am down here in Texas. I work part-time for Regen Ag Labs up in Nebraska. So I was actually working on some data when we jumped on here, and we're looking forward to seeing you guys samples and see what your soil is trying to tell us. One thing that's different about the way the Haney test looks at is it looks at the life in the soil, and that's something that you can't get from a standard soil test. And it shows you how the nutrients are interplaying with that, what's actually available, so we think we can help you be a little more efficient with your fertilizer use and give you some idea of what your soil is trying to tell you as far as how you're managing it and what's going on. And then Mitchell and Carolyn will be able to help you understand some of that more in depth with topsoil.
Yep. No, that's perfect. And especially as like Stephanie was saying, the main point of this is to be able to have some numbers as you go into your peer group meetings, being able to have some numbers, have some baseline. I'm sure there's a wide array of knowledge and of use of the Haney test within the group here. And we're going to go through kind of some ideas on what to do with these just two quick initial samples that you're able to do. Two samples, kind of get the conversation going. If you have more data already, that is fantastic. But these couple samples will be really great to show you that biological component, like Rick was just talking. So, and we're gonna deep dive into that later on the next webinar. For today, the main thing is really how to go about these samples, where to pull them, and how to get the most out of it. And Rick, while we got you, maybe your quick kind of thoughts on that. As they're thinking about, okay, I've got these two samples, how should I best use them? Any hot take from your side on I've got 2 samples. What should I do to get, to learn the most?
And so these 2 samples, for me to be clear, are what depth and from what good fields, bad fields, do we know?
That's what
Whatever
we
we
had.
want.
Yeah, that's what we had recommended, but people are free to do what they want. How we really want them to be able to learn from the test. And I do want to interject here. I forgot
That's
to say it at the beginning. If you have a question, please put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
we're going to do a
Stephanie.
couple of 0 to 6, and we're going to do the depth analysis. Do you remember?
These are just 0 to 6s. Just 0 to 6s, Rick. So 2 0 to
that'll work.
6s. Yep.
Good fields, maybe not so good field. You could do a field versus fence because you're not farming the fence row. So that gives you some management perspective. But if you have a couple of fields that you're very curious about, I would sample those, because
Yep.
thing that's so different about this test is that, it's what I've been doing here this morning before I jumped on here, was looking at some of this data from folks, and it's just so fascinating. We've got several samples in here that have the exact same organic matter, and they're very different from a microbial respiration point, from the food source that they're seeing. So you've got, identical organic matter numbers, but very different soils and how they're interacting and how their nutrients are cycling and what's going on here. So that's the valuable part of the Haney test. So just give some thought to what you want to feel, what samples you want to field, and what you want to try to get out of it and try to understand. And the more different they are, the better it'll help us to understand what's going on.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, having 2 things to compare against, because what we've got to do is establish kind of what's your baseline right now? What are we dealing with right now? And to Rick's point, a poor area that you think isn't performing correctly, maybe there's some problems going on, maybe we can identify what's happening there, and also look at a really good area and we can try to learn from that good spot. Carolyn, we can kind of go through some of these. I kind of teed up already, Continuum Ag. I'm a farmer myself from Southeast Iowa. Rick's farming background as well. Carolyn grew up on her family farm in Illinois. I mean, this is the, from farmers to farmers wanting to help you to, really be able to have good success within this project. And, if we can be a resource, for the peer groups and for anything, I mean, that's what we're here for, and working with Stephanie and Matt and their team, to just make sure that this is all smooth. But, Carolyn, we can kind of turn it over to you, and Rick, I know you've got to take care of your girls here this morning. So, we'll dig into it a bunch more on the next one.
Liz is up there in South Dakota, and she's in the rocket. She pulled into a state park, and there's like a foot of snow on the ground.
Oh yeah.
So it was 80 here yesterday, so, different. Yeah.
I think you've got the better end of the deal, Rick.
Well, especially, I don't know if you can see that, but can you see that motorcycle right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my new baby.
Nice.
So fun. All right, thank y'all.
Gonna be a big day.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay,
Carolyn,
yeah. So
Carolyn, why don't you take over here for a while?
Yeah. So last night, you guys should have received an email that came from me with an automatic link in it that will take you to TopSoil. So we created accounts for you guys. If you follow that link in there, it will take you to a set password page. If it just takes you to TopSoil and you're on the sign-in page, just type in your email and click forgot password, and that will do the same thing. If you did not receive the email, go to topsoil.ag and click the sign up side and just go ahead and fill out this form and get signed up there, and we'll get you guys connected to where you need to be. But hopefully you all received that email invitation. If not, feel free to reach out to me at Carolyn@continuum.ag or to Mitchell, and we can get you all set up and make sure you're good to go. So we were just kind of talking about this a little bit on suggestions of where you guys could pull the samples. Rick had mentioned fence row versus infield. That's one that we recommend to people quite a bit. Just gives you kind of an idea of, you know, the more native area versus the actually farmed area. So same thing with this next one, native versus infield. Cover versus no cover. If you've got fields that have cover and no cover, that would be a great option. You'll definitely see some cool stuff with the biological activity and water extractable carbon there. Manure versus synthetic fertilizer would be another good option. And then also, yeah, mentioned was best field versus worst field. If you've got, you know, differences in tillage versus no till, that would be another good one too. So lots of options there. Mitchell, any other suggestions on that?
Yeah, the main thing, you know, as you're thinking through this project, keep in mind that it's 2 samples and really try to get the most out of those initial samples, you know, and with everything here, keeping in mind that the Nature Conservancy is covering the cost of access to topsoil, access to us, the lab fees, the shipping, everything. So, you know, an awesome opportunity to, you know, really go and learn. Just make sure that there's 2 different samples that you're going to learn something from. Don't just do 2 samples, you know, from out back on the home farm, you know, unless there are 2 distinct things that you can compare against each other. And we're using topsoil just to keep track of where the samples were pulled and help you with the data analytics. That's really it. You don't have to use topsoil by any means. It's just a tool that we are bringing to the table for this project, just to help to keep track of everything. The results would come back from the lab just as an Excel file, and they're not very visual, and we want to help with interpretation. So that's why topsoil, and that's why choose 2 things that you can learn something from, that you can cross compare and get creative with it as well. Matt will be helping from Stephanie's team. Matt will be helping with any of the infield stuff, so he can definitely help you through the ideas. Put it in the chat or ask a question here if you would like, if you've got some creative ideas on where you want to do your Haney tests. And as you figure that out, now here's the next step.
Yeah. So once you're into topsoil, hopefully, like I said, you guys got that email from me, and that magic link in there works for you guys. But if not, we'll get you all sorted out there. So once you're in topsoil, you can add the field or fields that you're planning on sampling. Our suggestion would be, if you're doing like a fence row versus field, or if you're doing a cover versus no cover and they're in the same field, just draw that as one field boundary. For mapping purposes and looking at it later, it'll be a little bit easier to look at it all at once. So we would suggest you try to do it as one, but obviously if you're doing best field versus worst field or something like that, you've got to have 2 different ones anyway. But so in order to add a field on topsoil, there is an add field button in the top right corner. When you click on that, it will pop up this form here. You will be selected as the grower already, and then just enter your field name. If you have shape files that you'd like to upload to get the boundary from there, you can do that. You can also select the draw boundary button and it'll launch another page. I have a picture on that of the next slide. But if you're gonna do a shape file, zip those pieces together, SHP, SHX, DBF, and upload that, and then just click submit and add another if you have another field, or just click finish.
Yeah, for the most part, like
drawing,
Carolyn was saying, for the most part on this project, it'll end up being just draw in the area. And really, this is a important thing, as Carolyn and I were kind of thinking through, like, how do we do this? Because usually what we do is we do zones for the Haney testing that we perform. So it's a 10-acre zone covering an entire, you know, field boundary, an 80-acre field, for example. As you're choosing your sample locations here, don't necessarily think of it as a field. We're talking about it as add field and trying to keep the wording consistent to what topsoil tells you. The button literally in writing says add field. So we're trying to keep it consistent, but think of this more so as your trial area or the project area. And like Carolyn's saying, encompass the entire kind of trial area that you're talking here, even though the boundary that you'll end up drawing probably won't look like one of your actual field boundaries. It'll be a weird polygon just for the purposes of this project. And this is, kind of how to go about doing that.
Yeah, so if you're drawing the boundary ends, instead of upload file, select draw boundary, it'll pop up with a little button that has a pencil icon. Click on that and it will pull up the map view. On the right-hand side of that, it'll say there'll be a menu, and one of the top one is draw polygons. Click on that and then you can draw in your boundary. I probably should have drawn an example of like a field versus fence row here, but if that is what you're doing, your polygon would be more like this and kind of go into the neighbor's field a little bit, just so that you can get that fence row encompassed in the boundary. So it doesn't have to be the whole field. You can just do that smaller area. The area doesn't have to be, super small and exact, like 10, 20 acres is perfectly fine. Just as long as you get the two spots that you're pulling the samples in that boundary is the best option there. So you click your points to draw around, and then click the first point to close the polygon. Then you'll select done up here. That'll take you back to this add fields page. And then you can either do submit and add another if you've got another one, or click finish.
Caroline, can I say something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you are listening to this right now and you're thinking, okay, I've never done that. I don't know how to do this. I'm really if this is something you haven't done before, please let us know. Both Matt and myself are available to help you. We're willing, we've offered this in the email and we're offering it again. Get in contact with us and we'll arrange a time to come to your farm or do it over Zoom and walk through this with you. If you're interested in learning how to use topsoil, we can help.
Yeah. And we do have different video tutorials and stuff like that. We'll make sure that we get an email sent out with some of those links and some of that info, just so that you can have a little bit more of a video and a step-by-step on how to add those fields. It sounds kind of complicated here. We've tried to really make it simplified, where you click the draw the polygon and just land the points on the field where you want them to be added. And keep in mind that you can get it added in there and we can always go back and edit later. So it doesn't have to be perfect. We can always edit after.
It does sound simple if you haven't done it, but if you have done it, but if you haven't done it, we completely understand and we'll help.
100%. Yep, 100%.
Right. And Stephanie, they'll have this recording also.
Correct.
Yeah. So as you guys are going through it, I know we're not showing it live on the site right now, but as you're going through it, you'll also have this recording, and you can come back to this if you get stuck. So should be good. There's lots of resources. We'll make sure you're not lost there on the computer trying to put the boundaries in. So anyway, get that put in, click submit and finish, and then your boundary itself is in there. So once that's taken care of, you can, pull soil samples. In order to document the sample points, there's kind of a couple layers to this. So in order to document the sample points, you'll have to go out to the field with your phone or your iPad or whatever, mobile device that you have, and log into your TopSoil account there. There's no app. It's just, click the browser on the phone or the iPad and go to topsoil.ag and log in. You'll see the same view as you do when you log in on a desktop computer. So you're out in the field, you pull up topsoil. On the right side of the page is a pin icon. If you click on that, it will start to drop a pin at your current location. So you click on the pin icon, click on use current location, and then it will pop up with this form. This is where you can put in the name of the pin. So this would be, home farm cover crop or home farm no cover or whatever. But make sure you name that pin. And then you can click submit there. The name of the pin needs to match the name that you write on the soil bag. That's definitely important for knowing where the sample came from. So just make sure that those two things match each other.
Excuse me. So the key, one last thing with that one is,
Yeah,
draw the project field boundary to encompass the area that you are interested in testing. Then when you're actually out there in the field, or when you're preparing to go do the samples, you don't have to do it on the exact day that you sample, but we want to know kind of exactly where the sample was taken. And with our pin drop tool is a way to be able to do that. But it uses like the GPS on your phone, just like when you use Google Maps. And when it tracks the location on your phone. And like Carolyn was saying, just have that field pulled up, walk out there to the area that you're going to do the sample from. You can tap the add the pin, and it'll put a pin geotagged exactly where you're standing. So that's a good way to be able to keep track of where the sample is pulled. And then also what's tough here for this project, and we've got to try to make this simplified for all of you guys on the farm, for Stephanie and Matt, and then for on our side, Carolyn and the rest of her team. So in order to do that, we need to make sure that the grower, farm, field, and the sample ID all line up. So when you create an account on TopSoil, we'll have your grower name. When you add the field, we'll have your field name. But now we've got to have the sample name. And by adding the pin is how we can get that. So dropping the pin out there in your field where you're going to do the samples. But the key is that in order for TopSoil to work, you've got to have a field boundary first. You can't just, not have a boundary and just walk randomly out to a spot and drop a pin. You've got to have a field boundary. So that's why that step is step number one. Add in the field. Then when you go out to choose the specific sample location, now you can add the pin. And when you click on a field on your phone, there's only like 2 or 3 buttons that pop up, and this drop pin is one of those buttons. So again, we'll make sure that there's a specific video tutorial on that one itself, and can go from there. So
yep. Yeah, key thing on this, I think the most important part is just making sure that that pin name matches what you write on the bag and then what ends up on the submittal form. So we know where it came from, and then the data can get mapped in the correct spot. So TopSoil wise.
So
go ahead.
maybe real quick here, we'll answer Mark's question. Mark just put into the question that he's got 2 fields that are side by side, have some different cropping history between the 2 of them, and some pretty dramatic yield differences based on the soil types. And so Mark, since those 2 fields are side by side, when you make your new project boundary, just draw the line around the entire thing, around both of those fields. So if you're going to do one sample from, say it's the field that's on the west side of the road versus on the east side of the road, just encompass the entire thing in that one field boundary. And the key of that versus how you would typically do it, if you got the east field versus west field, if you do east field versus west field on TopSoil, you can only view one field at a time. You can't view a bunch of different fields side by side. So that's why we're saying, think of this a little bit differently than how you would actually manage these fields for a fertilizer recommendation or for your actual crop management. Draw around the entire 2 fields, and it doesn't have to be super pretty. It's just a good way to be able to see both of your sample pins at one time. But it sounds like what you got there will be a really good comparison, and we can learn what's going on between the 2 areas and maybe see, can we improve the yields in both? So,
yeah.
Okay, so Carolyn, we've got our pins. Now we're ready to go pull some soil samples.
Yep. Yeah, so you can sample with a probe or a shovel, whichever you have. We probably should get some videos out on this too, Mitchell, but it's not anything too complicated. If you guys have done it before or seen somebody do it, you can figure it out. The depth is 6 inches. Try to stay consistent with that. The key thing on that is just that most of the biology is in the top 4 inches, and that's the piece that drives the Haney test the most. So we just want to make sure that we're capturing that correctly. So 6 inches with a probe or a shovel. If you're using a probe, do a minimum of 10 cores, and they can kind of just be, you know, all around the spot where you drop that sample point. If you're using a shovel, you know, you'll kind of take like a slice on the, you'll dig a little hole and then take a slice on the edge of that hole. So 10 cores would be a lot in that case. You could do, you know, fewer there, but sample in the first half of April here, when the soil conditions are fit, not too wet, not too dry, definitely not frozen. Again, just the importance of that because of the biological activity. So make sure you get it done, you know, in the beginning of April when things start to warm up. The sample bag. So Stephanie and Matt got you guys the Brookside bags. You should have these already, it sounds like. Obviously yours will be blank here, but what you need to put on there is your name as the client name. Sample location would be whatever your, you know, whatever you called that field on TopSoil. And then sample ID, this would be like your cover versus no cover, or your manure versus synthetic fertilizer. This is that PIN name. So again, just try to make sure this stuff matches what you put as the PIN, and then we'll also make sure that that matches what we put on the submittal form too, just so that everything is consistent and we know where these samples came from. We can keep it nice and clean. The submittal form, this one's kind of got a lot of stuff on here, but it's the exact same thing we've been talking about. So make sure that the things on the submittal form match the bags and match what you put on TopSoil. You'll fill out date submitted, client name, and then sample location and sample ID. That sample location and sample ID will match what you put on the bag here. Same with the client name. Make sure you don't change the consultant number, email address, or this test selection all the way here at the bottom. These things are just to make sure that Brookside knows that you guys are tied to us so that we receive the data back. And then this SO19A is just to make sure you actually get the Haney test on this. So leave those ones, but fill out date submitted, client name, sample location, and sample ID. And yeah, just one more time, make sure it matches what you put on the bag and what you put on TopSoil, so we know, you know, that everything's consistent and where it came from.
Yeah. So this is really the key action item for each of you farmers as well, that you fill out this paper form and make sure that this paper form gets mailed to the lab with your soil sample bags of soil. So that's how the lab is going to know whose samples are these, where did they come from, what lab analysis do you need. Like Carolyn said, we've already filled in as much of the information as we can for you, but you just need to make sure that what is on the bag and what's on TopSoil matches what you put on the paper here, and just submit this along, you know, to the lab itself.
I'm just going to
just for
remind
consistency.
Yep, I'm going to remind everyone here that on my last email that I sent with the instructions, this was attached to the email as a PDF. If you need it again, just let me know. I'll also make sure that it's on the Farmer Advocate website as a PDF so you could print it off. And if you don't have access to a printer or need any kind of, you know, need us to mail it to you, once again, that's what Matt and I are here for, to support you.
Yep. Yep. Just let us know if you need anything. The main thing on that form is just getting everything to be consistent is what's going to avoid as many headaches as we can avoid and make this as easy for you on the farm and as easy for all the rest of us as possible. So consistency across is key. And but yeah, let us know if you need anything at all. Again, we'll have all the materials and stuff going out here, you know, if you need any additional help and support.
Yep. And so I do want to add that when Matt mailed these out, he included a return an envelope with the Brookside address on it. We did want to put the return, we wanted to help try to pay for the return mailing, but we couldn't do that because we didn't know what would be your exact weight or where you'd be mailing it from. So that is something that each person will be responsible for, is the cost of shipping your sample to Brookside.
Yeah, and I think usually what we usually do is just do the like a flat rate box. You can do the small flat rate shipping from just from the post office. They're a couple bucks, not a huge deal. Or you can do a regular box, whatever you want to do. You might want to tape the bag shut just to make sure that the bags, stay nice and closed. And we typically just use packing tape to do that, just packing tape, just like to put it together in the box. We can get these taken down to the lab, or Stephanie, I'm not sure if we've solidified anything. I know at one point we were discussing potential for Matt to maybe aggregate some of the samples together and maybe get them down to the lab in bulk, or get some stuff shipped in bulk. But even for everybody to just get them to the mail and get them down to Brookside, you can utilize kind of whatever means are easiest for you to get them shipped.
The bag that we included in the mailing is a flat rate bag. So you could just take that to the post office and ship it if you want to go that route. Matt and I are waiting to hear from you. We're waiting to hear from people if they want help with topsoil, mapping, collecting, shipping. When we hear from you, we're gonna go with what you want and the people that are involved. So just let us know, email us or call us, and all of that information is on the website. And we'll share it at the end of this video too.
Yeah. Good. So make sure that this sample submittal form that you fill out is included in that box that you send to the lab. That's how they know, where the samples are and what test needs to be run on them. So don't forget to put that in when you're shipping stuff. Yeah, it sounds like you guys already have the address. Ship the samples as soon as you can after sampling actually happens. Again, the Haney test is very focused on the biological piece, so we got to get that to the lab as soon as we can so that we can make sure that those numbers are represented accurately. And then if you're not using what they have included and sent to you, just make sure that you find, like Mitchell said, that small box from the post office is a good option, just so that the bags don't move around too much when they are on their way to the lab. We don't want them to be busted open and then you won't have anything for those guys to test. So taping them shut, definitely.
Yeah, just make sure that this,
yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, making sure that the samples get to the lab all in one piece and that it's not a box full of loose soil that ends up at the lab. We've definitely been there and done that. So make sure that you get it, get them packaged together, good and tight, and get them to the lab as quickly as we can. That lab submittal form, looking at some of the questions here, that lab submittal form that Carolyn had a screenshot of before is on the latest email that Stephanie sent. We'll absolutely make sure that it gets on all of the emails going forward here as well, and make sure that you've got access to it. It's just a one-page printout that Carolyn's got the screenshot of there, but it's on the attachment in Stephanie's latest email. What was the other question? It was another good one here. Oh yeah, so we're talking about getting these samples pulled around that first week of April. And yeah, to the question here from Mike is saying, hey, it's recommended to sample the first week of April, but looking at getting a couple inches of rain and it's looking like it's going to be pretty wet. What's more important, the soil moisture or the date? And it's absolutely moisture, Mike. You're right. You're right. Don't worry too much about the calendar date. Besides the fact that we want to try to, get these samples done, get you some data back before you get too busy with planting, and also be able to get the data back, so that we can go through them in our follow-up webinar to this. So that's really the key thing, but you're right. I mean, don't go out there and try to pull the samples when it's too wet. Try to let things warm up a little bit. Middle of April would be ideal. I think Carolyn, you were saying, hey, try to aim for before April 21st or so would be ideal. And because it takes the lab about a week to get the results back. So it's pretty darn quick, but being able to get the results back and making sure that we are able to get the most out of them is key. But yeah, don't worry too much about the date on the calendar, mostly just focused on what's going on beneath the soil, because that's what we're going to be able to quantify. So make sure that the conditions in the soil are as good as we can, but also maybe just, keep in mind the conditions in the soil are not going to be perfect every time. If it is a little bit wet, just remember that. And as we look at the results, keep that in mind in terms of how we interpret those results, because the biology, of course, changes very rapidly. It's very responsive to the weather, to the moisture, to what's going on above ground. And we just have to factor that in when we interpret the results. So, but try to do it as, in decent soil conditions. And that's why we target kind of right around planting time. If you're going to go put a seed in the ground, that it's good conditions to put a seed in the ground, it's probably good conditions to grab a Haney test.
Yep. So you've shipped your samples off to the lab. Like Mitchell said, a week or so, and we'll have the data back. A couple more days for us to get stuff mapped on here. And then, your results will be on TopSoil. So we just wanted to show, what that will look like on TopSoil. Of course, your guys's will be a little bit different because the fields will likely be split more in half, either by east and west or north and south, whatever you end up doing with your, 2 tests in kind of one project area or boundary there. But we map this stuff on TopSoil. When you come back into your account after the data is here, you'll click on your field and then you'll click on soil health, and it'll drop down with a whole list of the parameters from the Haney test. If you click on the different ones, it'll, populate your map with pretty colors, and that'll help you interpret this too. So the key thing on this that I just wanted to show you guys is the legend that we have on the left-hand side is based on our entire data set. So this will kind of tell you, where you fall it compared to other soils that have been sampled by us before. So you'll be able to kind of, make some interpretations from this and see where you're at, where that ranks compared to other samples. And it can give you an idea of, is this part of my field good, average, bad, like where kind of are things sitting there.
Yeah. So we'll dig deep into it on the next webinar, but the main thing on that, the map there, is that it'll end up being like what Carolyn's got, an orange versus a yellow, or a green versus a red, or whatever. Like that's kind of the difference that we want to be able to see. The number itself is in behind this data on top. So when you hover over it, shows the actual numbers. But the key thing here is, again, just being able to kind of show and compare. We'll dig deep into the results next time. But as you're thinking about where to pull these samples from, keep in mind that it'll kind of be a view like what Carolyn has, except for it'll be a little bit more square of, like she's saying, east versus west, because the east is all, cover crop. The west has been no cover crop, or on the west side is the fence row. The east side is out in the field, so it'll be a side-by-side comparison. And then as we toggle through, you'll be able to compare the 2 samples together, but also compare the samples to the rest of our data set. And we've done tens of, like, thousands and thousands and thousands of these Haney tests now that you're able to kind of benchmark yourself against, so that you're not just comparing 2 samples, but you're able to learn from the rest of all the work that we've been doing since 2015 on this test. So really trying to get you as much value as we can. But again, we'll dig into that next time. The key thing here, just keep it in mind what is going to provide a good side-by-side comparison when we go back and look at the results. So when the results get done at the lab, they'll come automatically to us. We will map them for you. We will also send you the raw lab data itself. So that comes in an Excel file. You'll get the Excel files. You'll be notified that the results are done. You can chat with Matt or with us on those results. But also keep in mind that we will dig deep into them as a group. That way we don't have to go through with every single one of you individually how to read that test. And if you remember, I did go through some of the interpretation of the analysis when I was with you all in Ohio a couple months ago. So we do have some old video content of me explaining the test and explaining this project. So that's another great tool to be able to go back and review that if you would like to here as well. But just keeping in mind that we'll get you the results back right away, but then we'll do a group analysis to really dig in and make sure that your questions get answered.
Yeah.
Carolyn, you got kind of the last stuff here?
Yeah, this is kind of the last thing here. So if you would like to make sure that you have your data back for the next meeting, try to get those shipped by April 21st. Like we had talked about a little bit already though, like soil conditions when you pull these samples are important. So, you know, for some reason you can't get out there and get them done by then, just know it's likely that you won't have the data back from the lab yet, but we'll still, you know, make sure we get it to you even if it's after the fact. Yeah, and then the next meeting with Dr. Haney and us to dig through the results and do a deep dive on all this is May 4th at 7:30. So that's kind of all
That's
we have
7:30
for
our
you
time.
guys. No,
Or
7:30
their time. Yeah,
their
sorry.
time.
7:30 their time.
6:30 our time. Yeah, yeah.
My bad.
Don't listen to
My
Mitch.
bad, my bad.
7:30 for you guys.
No, sorry. And you guys have that info. Stephanie's got it all there as well. But
Everything,
yeah, so we've got
yep,
basically a month.
everything's on the Farmer Advocate for Conservation website. I send it out on the email all the time. But one thing that we didn't talk about here, just to make everyone clear about like where their actual data is going and who will see that. I think, you know, there's a few times when you talk about it, I think just to reassure them where that's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
no, that's great. So
go ahead.
the from on overall, I think what you're gonna ask Stephanie is for everybody on the Nature Conservancy is covering the bill here. Okay, they've got the grant, and Stephanie was the one with the creative idea of, hey, how do we really help all of you as we get these peer groups going? How do we help you to really be successful here? And Stephanie came up with the idea of, hey, why don't we help everyone to get some data? The Nature Conservancy doesn't see any of this data. Farmers, you own this data. Nature Conservancy is just covering the bill, which is an awesome opportunity to really go and learn from each other. We've got a good group of you on here today, but also keep in mind that the rest of the folks that were at the event, you know, make sure that they are aware of this project, make sure that they take this opportunity and are able to really learn from it. We will, you know, of course, we have to get access to the data itself, but you own it. We don't sell it. We don't share it with anybody. We don't use it at all. You own all of it. If you do want some help from like Matt with the Nature Conservancy, I mean, it's your data. You can share it with whoever you want to share it to. If you have somebody else that's in your operation that needs access to your TopSoil account, just let us know. We can have 2 different people with logins with access to the same fields. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. If you need to, you know, maybe you've got one of your children that are involved, or a landlord, or whoever, you know, that you want to have access to the tool, that is all an option as well. But yeah, the all of this data is owned by you on the farm. If you don't want to use TopSoil, you don't have to use TopSoil. It's just our resource that we're bringing to the table to help with interpretation and make sure that you get the most out of these results. Just because we've done a lot of these, and I've really learned and really know what we're doing when it comes to these results. But Yeah, Carolyn, anything else from your side on that?
Nope, I think that's it.
Stephanie, that kind of
There is another question in the chat.
Yeah.
From Jeff. He's asking, where do we get the video of Mitchell's Ohio presentation? So that is also on the Farmer Advocate for Conservation website. It's right on the first page. I have the Haney Soil Test instructions, and when this is over, I'm going to send everyone out a video link to this actual webinar and then all of the information again. But Mitchell's, a few different versions of Mitchell's talk is on there. We put the whole thing on there from December 14th, and then we also did a shortened version of it just if you have less time. So they're both on the Farmer Advocate for Conservation website.
There's a variety of resources too. If you are on YouTube or Googling the Haney test, Googling Continuum Ag, I've got some YouTube videos that I've built over the years about these things as well. So a variety of resources that are out there, but Matt is your go-to guy for any questions as well. And we're happy to help as much as we can, of course, also. And yeah, we'll build some more like specific mini tutorials and stuff like that. We've got a variety of them that we've built already. But we'll just make sure that those are all in a easy to find spot for everybody, to make sure that you've got the resource that you need to make this easy, and make sure that you get the value out of it. It's not supposed to be tough. It should be an easy process. Everything within TopSoil, should be hopefully less than, a half hour, like max, to be able to go through and do it. If you're tech savvy, you'll breeze right through. But even if you're not tech savvy, no worries. And we'll make sure that you get all the tools that you need and be able to utilize the systems here.
Yeah. Matt, do you want to, if you're available and you want to come off mute and just let them know what how to get a hold of you?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Like Stephanie and Mitchell and Carolyn said, I'm glad to help any way that I can. Please contact me. You can always email me at m.burkholder@tnc.org. I think that's already up on the website, or you can always give me a phone call or shoot me a text. My number is 567-289-1897. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And especially with Matt, he's right there in Ohio, and a shorter drive versus us over here in Southeast Iowa. So, but a great, local resource there if you need anything. And Matt then knows how to get a hold of us as needed. So,
we are getting to, we have about 10 minutes left. So I just want to, if you're on here and you have a question and you want it to be addressed, please type it in or raise your hand and we will answer that. And then if there's anything else final from the presenters that we haven't talked about.
One thing that I thought of as Carolyn was explaining how to do the samples in the field. So if you have a probe, an actual soil probe, get 6 inches deep and usually about 10 cores. If you don't have a probe, you can just use a shovel and just kind of make your own soil cores essentially by digging down 6 inches deep and just kind of taking some slabs of soil or trying to make 1 inch by 1 inch like columns of soil to kind of resemble what a probe would do. What we do is we take those soil cores or take some of the soil from the shovel and put it in a bucket. So that way in the bucket, you can kind of mix it, homogenize that soil, and then dump it into the bag. It's typically easier to go from a probe or from a shovel into a bucket and then into the paper bag. So just one other tidbit there. I mean, a 5-gallon bucket, or we use like feed buckets. So whatever you've got available. And just to really, the key ends up just being make sure that you get a good representation of the area. You don't just want to take like a shovel full, like a clod of soil. It's probably not going to be really representative of what you're trying to learn about. So just as you're out there, have fun with it, dig around and see if you can find some worms. but being able to make sure that you get a good representation of what's going on out there in the field. Try to not get a lot of residue and roots and stuff like that in the sample. I mean, it'll happen, but you just don't want to have a bunch of plant material in with your soil sample, just trying to avoid things that are going to throw it out of whack. If you know that there's a tile line going through somewhere and you might have some subsoil, some of that like B horizon soil that's in that sample, just try to avoid some of those things that could cause the results to be inaccurate. Stalling for us, Stephanie. See if we got any more questions coming in.
I don't see any questions, but if you think of something after this, let us know. I think
Agreed.
the only one other thing that I want to say is that if you are not part of a peer group and you are interested in being in a farmer to farmer peer group, and you please let us know. The farmer advocates, that is something that they're doing, getting together on evenings or time that's convenient for the people in their area, just so they could share knowledge with each other, ask each other questions around any soil health or farming topics. This Haney test is only one of them. So that's another thing that please email me and Matt if you are interested in being in part of one of those and you aren't already.
Absolutely. A couple other things that come to mind with that. One of them, so the project here is 2 samples. If you want to do more than 2, I mean, have at it, but just keep in mind that the Nature Conservancy isn't going to pay for it. If you want to do more than that, let us know, let Matt or Stephanie know, like we can get you access to more samples, of course, but just know that, that's, you'll end up just paying for them. But if you have stuff that you want to learn about, and want to compare and have it all done at the same time, the more the merrier. Stephanie, what about what if one of the folks on the call has a neighbor or has a cousin or whatever that maybe wasn't at the event but wants to get involved in this project? Can they still do that? I don't know if we've talked about that yet.
We're putting the word out there to all of the farmer advocates.
Okay.
If they have people in their peer group or people that are potentially wanting to be in their peer group, then just email us and we'll send you the us with the addresses and we'll send you the bags and the information.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you've got somebody that you think would be able to benefit from, getting these samples that can get involved here too. Let's get them brought to the table. I think that's a big thing that we got to keep in mind here too, that all of us that are on the call here that are going to the events, we've maybe already kind of drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. So, this is a good opportunity to encourage some of your neighbors to get involved as well. Just getting them some numbers, getting them some data, helping them to see what's going on and to better understand what's happening with their soil health. And maybe they're not, wanting to get involved, right away, or they're not going to jump in, head first, but this is a really cool project and something that really isn't happening, at any kind of scale. So the more that we can, utilize this as a good opportunity to learn and to encourage more people to get involved, the more we can do that, the better. So just let Stephanie and Matt know if you do have somebody else, and then we can get them access to TopSoil. Just need their email. So, or anybody can go directly to TopSoil as well, but cool.
Okay, well, I don't see any questions in here. If you think of one later, let us know. We're happy to work with you. Matt's happy to come out to your farm. If he gets too many requests, we'll call in some of our other staff, myself and some others. So let us know. Thanks, everyone. I hope you guys all have a fabulous Thursday.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.